Shalom, everyone. We started Masechet Nazir, and in order to broader the picture of Masechet Nazir in the next few little short videos that I'll make, I'll touch few principal questions, and we'll start today with the question whether Nazir is a good thing or a bad thing. Is a Nazir a desirable thing, or maybe it's not necessary to be a Nazir? And we'll do it through the beautiful story that we found in the beginning of the Masechet and touch some other ideas from the Rambam. In the next few weeks, we'll hear and listen to other commentators dealing with the question whether Nazir is to become a Nazir, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So let me share the sources, and we start right from the pasuk that starts the parsha of Nazir in Bamidbar chapter 6. And the pasuk says the following: Daber al bnei Israel v'amarta alehem ish o isha ki yafli. This concerns both men and women. Women can make a vow. Women can make a vow to be a Nazirite. Ish o isha ki yafli. That's a word we will pay attention to. Lindor neder Nazir. Okay, to be a Nazir is a specific category in the big picture of neder, of making vows. Lehazir laHashem, and that's an interesting concept. Speak to the Israelites and say to them, if any man or women explicitly utter a Nazirite, a Nazirite's vow to set themselves apart for God. So does it mean that if you don't do it for God, you do it with other intentions, it's a bad thing? It's even maybe a sin? And how do you specify that your neder to become a Nazir is to God? Okay, and we'll touch that beautiful phrase or interesting phrase lehazir laHashem through the story that we found in the beginning of Masechet Nazir in page 4. We also saw it in Masechet Nedarim. But I brought to you the beginning of that story as it's stated in the Talmud Yerushalmi. And there the Talmud is saying the following: it was stated in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, and we're in the world of Tanaim, the ancient pious one. The ancient pious one were a group of pious people in the time of the Second Temple who took upon themselves, Hasidim Rishonim, they took upon themselves extra behavior in worshiping God, and they were considered to be non-sinners, like they were very tzaddikim, very pious, very pure. And they, the ancient pious ones, desired to bring us a purification offering. But the omnipresent did not let a sin happen to them. In other words, they wanted to experience what it is to bring a korban chatat, because they never brought korban chatat, because they never sinned. So what they did, so they made a vow of Nazir in order to be able to bring a purification offering. They found it a trick. And the trick is that if we'll take a vow of Nazir, at the end of the 30 days, we can bring Korban Chatat. And then we'll experience that religious happening religious experience that we never had. And so that's what they did. And Rabbi Shimon says they became sinners because they made a vow of Nazir, for it was said, he shall atone for him for what he sinned about the person. In other words, Rabbi Shimon is saying, what did they do? They wanted to experience Korban Chatat, but they were good people. Dafka, when they made a vow to become a Nazir, they sinned, because a Nazir is not a positive thing to be. And we know it from the pasuk that is describing when they bring the chatat, when Nazir is bringing korban chatat, it's because he sinned something. What's the sin? The sin is that the one sinned against his own person because he barred himself from wine. Because it's one example. Because a Nazir, what he does, he distances himself from normal, from the society. And that's why he's taking upon himself an act that separates the Nazir from normal people, from the society, and that is a sin. And it turns out that Shimon, the just, parallels Rabbi Shimon. And the Gemara here in Yerushalmi is saying that this idea, that what Rabbi Shimon, the Tana, understands in Nazir that it's a sin, because and that's why the pious ones, when they made the vow to become a Nazir, that was their sin, even though they never sinned before, because they decided to bring them, they decided to take upon themselves Nazirut, which is not a desirable thing. And his ideas, the Tana Rabbi Shimon idea, is similar. It's parallel to what we know from Shimon HaTzadik, the priest who lived in the beginning of the Second Temple. It's hard to say exactly when did he live. We know that Shimon HaTzadik appears in Masechet Avot. Shimon HaTzadik Mishiarei HaKnesset HaGdolah is the last one of the people of the great assembly. But in any case, he is a Kohen, and he's pious, and he's a tzaddik. And Rabbi Shimon, the Tana, after the destruction of the temple, after even Mered Bar Kochva, agrees with what Shimon HaTzadik said. And what did he say? This is a story that we already saw in Nazir Daled, and also in Nedarim. And I'll just tell you the story because we all learned it already. That Shimon HaTzadik said, I never accepted, he was a priest, I never accepted an offering of a Nazir except for one. In other words, he never trusted the Nazirim that came to finish their Nazirut and bring the Korbanot, many different Korbanot that they had to bring. He never accepted their Korban as a real one, or never accepted their Nazirut to be a pure one, in order for him to feel comfortable to eat from the Korbanot, except for once, when he saw a man who came from the south, and I saw that he was reddish, and he had beautiful eyes and good looks, and his hair in nice rows of waves. And I said to him, my son, what induced you to cut off that beautiful hair? And he said to me, great man, I was a shepherd in my village, and I went to fill the water vessel, and with water, when I saw my mirror image in the water, and the instinct, rushed over me and tried to lose me from the world. In other words, he looked at his image, and his yetzer, and his instinct said, wow, you're so beautiful, and he started to be arrogant. Exactly the story of Narcissus in the Greek mythology. And that young boy told his yetzer, when his proud and arrogant rose up, and I said to it, wicked one, you are rushing me to something which is not yours. It is upon me to sanctify you to heaven. And then he said, I need to get rid of my hair that brings arrogance and pride and egoistic and narcissistic behavior. And I bent my head to him. And Shimon is saying, I bent my head to him, to this young Nazir, and I told him, my son, there should be many more in Israel who fulfill the omnipresence will like you. About you, the verse says, man or woman, if he clearly articulates vowing a vow of Nazir, to be a Nazir for the eternal, for God. In other words, we hear from here that Shimon HaTzadik understand that most of the Nazirim do not do it for Hashem. And this young man is the only example he had in his entire life that he felt that he had a real Nazir, that his Nazir was for Hashem, with the right intentions for Hashem. Now, I want to open the discussion a little bit more, and because the emphasis in this story was the hair, and the words describing the hair sounds very much alike what we know from Avshalom. We also saw that discussion in the Gemara, in the pages, the first pages that we read in Nazir. And it says in Shmuel Bet, no one in all Israel was so admired for his beauty as Avshalom. And from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, he was without blemish. And then we also hear about his hair. That's the hair that will cause him his death. And it says that when he cut his hair, he had to have it cut every year, for it grew too heavy for him. And the hair of his head weighed 200 shekels by the royal weight. It had beautiful, full hair that weighed a lot. And we saw the discussion in the Gemara whether he was a Nazir or not. He also ran to the south, and he came to Yerushalayim. It's very, it's echoing the story that we have about Shimon HaTzadik, someone coming from the south to Yerushalayim. But we know that Avshalom lost his life because of his hair, or due to his hair. And it says in the Mishnah in Sotah, Avshalom was excessively proud of his hair, and therefore he was hanged by his hair. So that is definitely another story that's echoing the story, saying that if someone is making a Nazirut, and then through his hair that makes him proud, arrogant over the rest of the people, then that is definitely a sin. The complex attitude towards Nazir is also echoing in two different places in the Rambam, and I'm just gonna, we're gonna read them quickly, and because I want to start this Masechet with a question that we have to keep asking ourselves throughout the Masechet, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, and whether should people take Nazirut upon themselves more often, or more people, and forever, or for 30 days, or this is something we need to abstain from. This is something we need to keep away from. And I want to add another, to talk about the elephant in the room, and we'll see it later in other teachings, is Christianity, because we do know that throughout the time of the second temple, we had Nazirim in Am Yisrael, and there were many. And after the Natsrut, after Christianity take upon themselves, that virtue of becoming a monk, becoming like a Nazirite is the one who is the closest to God. It seems like Judaism started to shrink the room of Nazirim and Nazirut in the Jewish world as a virtue, as a way to get closer to God, even though we still had Nazirim throughout history. And we'll get to them also in the future. But the Rambam in Hilchot Deot is saying the following: a person might say, since envy, desire of honor, and the like are a wrong path and drive a person from the world, I shall separate from them to a very great degree and move away from them to the opposite extreme. For example, he will not eat meat, he will not drink wine, nor marry, nor live in a pleasant home, nor wear fine clothing, but rather wear sackcloth and car's wool and the like, just as the pagan priests do. And we have a list here of where the Rambam separate the person from what the priests of the pagan priests do. And we as Jews should not do the same if we want to become pious, to go to the other extreme and abstain from all these things. And if we see here, we have things of Nazir, not to drink wine, not to eat meat, but not to marry. Judaism doesn't say that a Nazir cannot marry. So obviously the Rambam describes here Nazirites that he knows from his time, and this is a negative thing. This too, says the Rambam, is a bad path, and it is forbidden to walk upon. Whoever follows this path is called a sinner. Again, it's as implied by Numbers number 6. We saw the pasuk statement concerning Nazirite, and he, the priest, shall make an atonement for him for his having sinned regarding his soul. And our sages declared, if a Nazirite who abstain only from wine requires atonement, how much more so does one who abstain from everything. So the Rambam is saying, look, we should take this idea of Nazirite and take it, have the right room for it in our lives. The basic idea is not such a good idea, because it can cause us to abstain from other things that God allowed us to have in the world, and we shouldn't be like the pagan priests. In Hilchot Nedarim, as opposed to what we saw in the Rambam here, in Hilchot Nedarim, says the Rambam, when a person takes a vow in order to establish his character traits and correct his conduct, he is considered eager and praiseworthy. what is implied? If a person was a glutton, and he took a vow forbidding meat for a year or two, not for the rest of his life, but just for a year or two. Or a person who was obsessed with wine, and he took a vow to forbidding himself from drinking wine for a prolonged period, or he forbade himself from becoming intoxicated. A person would continually pursue illicit gain, and was overexcited about wealth, and forbidding presents or benefits from people in a particularly country. Similarly, a person who would be proud of his comely appearance and took a Nazirite vow, okay, or the like. So the Rambam is giving us a long list of things that bother us, and we know it about ourselves, and we're trying to fix our ways. So then we take a vow for a short period of time. Okay, what does it tell us about what the Rambam thinks about becoming a Nazir for the rest of, forever? So he say, if you do it for a short period of time because you are aware of some characteristic traits that you want to fix, that you want to work on, then it's okay. All of these are paths in the service of God. And concerning such vows and the likes, our sages said, vows are safeguard for restraint. In other words, these are good things that can really distance us from sinning. So we have here again also the Rambam as well as the Gemara a more perplexed perplexed understanding of the Nazir. It could be a good thing, and it could be a very bad thing. It could be a sin. And we have to keep asking ourselves, why are we taking this vow of Nazirut upon ourselves? And if to go back to the beginning, and is the Nazir doing it for God, to set themselves apart for God, or is doing it in order to gain some respect and honor from other people, and then it's a total sin. And the way that the Talmud Yerushalmi, that we another place that we didn't bring it here, but I want to mention, the Midrash in Bereshit Rabbah is explaining the idea of Shimon HaTzadik, and he's saying, I don't trust the Nazirim never to regret. In other words, he says, a person takes a vow upon themselves for a good reason, but it's not an easy thing to do. And therefore, says Shimon HaTzadik, I don't trust them not to regret. And if a Nazir had some feelings of regret, then the offering that he brings to the Mikdash is a bad thing. It's the wrong offering because it comes from the wrong emotion. And therefore, it sounds like from the Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik and from Rabbi Shimon and from the Rambam later that we have to really be careful with a vow of Nazir that we take upon ourselves. And next week, please God, we'll continue our search in trying to understand whether Nazir is a good thing or a negative thing. Thank you.